Well, joining us now is David Austin from he's the regulator from the British Board of Film Classification. Also with us, Miles Jackman, who's an obscenity lawyer that specialises in defending cases relating to pornography. Also with us, Vicky Shotbolt, who co-chairs the UK Council for Child Internet Safety and is CEO of the Parent Zone. And also with us is Pandora Blake, who is a porn actor and an activist. Thank you all for coming in. First of all, do you all agree it's a good idea to find a way to stop children accessing porn? Is that a given?
Yes, absolutely.
I think we have to accept the child protection imperative. The question is how we do it.
Would you agree with that, Pandora?
I think that we need to keep children safe from being exposed to stuff they're not ready to. But the question of how we do that and how much we involve the internet in that is, I think, up for debate.
So, tell us first of all, David, how this is going to work. So if you want to access porn, you're going to have to put what? Credit card details in, prove that you're over 18, put your passport number in?
So first of all, this is a really important piece of child protection legislation. We think it's absolutely going to work. There's some people that challenge that, but we think it's absolutely going to work. So what will happen in practice is when the law comes into force, when you try to access as an adult a commercial pornographic website, you'll be faced with a splash screen asking you to prove that you are 18 or over. And there'll be a menu of options to choose from. Because one of the things that the adult sites want is the maximum amount of traffic to those sites to maximise their revenue. So there'll be a number of options that people need to be comfortable with to choose which method they choose to age verify. And that age verification will mean that pornography is no longer one click away for children.
Well,
But it also needs to be very straightforward for adults to access.
Before you come in, I just want to clarify this because people who haven't accessed these sites won't necessarily understand. So let's say you say, yes, I want to look at that, tick a box, you put your passport number in. Where does that information then go? So
you can age verify in many ways. And one method of age verification that will come in, for instance, is you can buy a card in a newsagent, you prove you're 18 or over there, and then you enter a 16-digit number when you try to get access to the porn website. So it's completely anonymous in terms of, that porn website will have no information, personal information on you whatsoever.
I think one of the problems is that it's quite easy to obviate these systems. You can just get around them. So even proponents like Earl Errol have said that at best 70% of people will comply with this, which means that you can use proxies, you can use VPNs, you can get around it. So it's practically unworkable in the first instance. So we have to accept that first of all. Then there are the risks with regards to privacy and security. Is this necessary? Is it proportionate to the stated aims? And simply put, do your viewers want their private sexual details leaked into the public domain after a malicious hack? And that is our biggest concern, that all of your viewers could suffer from that.
Well, could I come back on a couple of points? First of all, in terms of compliance, we've been talking to the adult industry for the past year, talking to all the big players from Pornhub to Penthouse, and every single one of them has said that they will comply. One of these companies owns hundreds of thousands of websites, so all these websites will be behind age verification. And the other thing I'd say to reassure users is that if you do not want to give your personal details to a pornographic website, you do not have to. So I have age verified, you'd expect me to as a regulator, in a way that no pornographic company will have any of my details.
Well, I think the problem really isn't that the pornographic companies are going to have the details, it's that the age verification tools are going to have them. And the Digital Economy Act, which this policy is based on, doesn't empower you, the regulator, to enforce the age verification tools to subscribe to any particular privacy or security standards beyond basic data protection, which is inadequate to mitigate the harms of, as Miles mentioned. For example, one of the things that you recommend in your guidance is ease of use. So if you're going to a website and you want to visit it twice in a day, you don't want to have to resubmit your documents each time. The only way that they can maintain some kind of cookie that's confirmed that you've already verified is to keep a record of which access token has visited which websites. Now that data set is enormously tempting for hackers, and while some of the age verification providers are going to be very good on privacy and security, I think the card in the shop is a great solution. Not all of them are, and there's nothing in the legislation, or the regulator isn't even empowered to force them to uphold those standards.
Can I say what we're seeing in terms of the age verification providers that we're talking to is a kind of mini arms war. They all want to be very successful. They want to be, market leaders. So they're looking at solutions that they require less and less data in order to enable people to access online pornography, which is quite right. The solution I've chosen, for instance, the third-party provider, destroys the data. They completely destroy any data they have on me. So I'm very confident that I will be able to access any website without the porn company having any information about me whatsoever. And people should choose which solution they want to use that they feel comfortable with. If they want to give details to pornographic websites, then by all means do. But many people don't, as you've suggested, and they don't need to.
I want to just bring Vicky in here from a sort of parent perspective. And we've had so many messages this morning saying children are getting their sex education essentially through porn. It's passed around at school. Some parents are uncomfortable. As a nation, we're a bit queasy talking about sex. It's all a bit awkward. And so what do you think this is the right solution, this law?
I think it's a solution. I mean, in many ways, it's a no-brainer. Of course, it's a good idea that we make it hard for under 18s to access hardcore pornography sites. Nobody really ought to argue against that. Will it be the complete solution? Of course not. We do need to get less queasy about talking to our children about sex. And it's really vital that parents know that this will not fix it completely. This will not mean that children stop seeing porn. Therefore, they do still have to have those conversations, and we do need to have good sex education in schools.
I agree with you completely. My concern is that the amount of time and money that the government has spent bringing this law into force is quite opposed to the fact that under austerity we've cut funding to youth clubs, libraries, schools and sex education, which is provided by impartial experts. And I think that trying to seek a technological solution to a social problem is really the wrong way to go about it. I mean, personally, as a porn maker, I try and make porn that if a 17-year-old were to watch it, they'd get good messages about sex and about relationships and gender. But obviously not all porn is like that. And the only way that we can create resilience amongst young people is to talk to them and educate them.
Actually, I really wouldn't disagree with you. And I think, you know, personally, as a parent, my 17-year-old, sorry, my 19-year-old now, but if he was accessing a porn site, I wouldn't necessarily have a problem with that. In fact, I wouldn't have a problem with that at all. But those aren't the young people that we're just thinking about. We're thinking about the 8-year-old that comes across it accidentally in the playground.
But isn't this also a parent's responsibility? Parents know that they need to have parental locks on, they need to be monitoring their children's use of their...
That's so hard though. You know, these devices are designed to be personal devices. It simply isn't realistic to expect a parent to constantly monitor their child's use of the internet. And actually it is the accidentally coming across pornography. It's the one click away. It's the big brother who comes around and, you know, happens to have it on their site. It's those occasions that this will help with.
I think it's really important. I think you're absolutely right. It's really important. The NSP, about the one click away and accidental stumbling across pornography, the NSPCC and Children's Commissioner did some research, and they found that around half of children that were exposed to pornography did so accidentally rather than actively seeking it out. So this law, which I agree is not a silver bullet, it's part of a wider suite of solutions, will have a massive impact in stopping that accidental stumbling across commercial pornography.
You talked about an arms race earlier, and I think one of the problems in the Cambridge Analytica situation is simply that we should be thinking very closely about technological solutions. Is this the right way to deal with it? I think we're all agreed that there is a discussion that we need to have societally about the nature, role of pornography, how it's consumed, why it's consumed, and how it can be destigmatised, and we can actually talk about it in an open and honest fashion, which isn't blamey, stigmatising, or otherwise uncomfortable.
And also, as was in our longer film, we spoke to a woman who said actually the porn industry has a responsibility here not to be misogynistic, not to be racist, and to actually not reinforce these really dangerous messages to young people.
Absolutely. I think one of the big problems that we're looking at is that the way that kids are one click away from porn is mostly via the free tube sites, which are advertising based, and people upload mostly pirated content by producers like myself without the consent of the performers. So it's kind of being published out of context, it's often very outdated, it's often relabeled with kind of slurs and misogynistic language. So having age verification for the tube sites is a very different proposition from having age verification for niche, specialised community sites for people who share perhaps an interest in a particular kind of LGBT or fetish type of content, which isn't being accessed by children. And our concern is that there's going to be really heavy freedom of expression costs to forcing all websites to introduce age checks, which can be very off-putting to viewers who are concerned about their privacy.
Can I also ask, why is it 18 and not 16 when the legal age of consent in this country is 16?
The simple answer to that is our compliance under the UN Charter on Human Rights for Children, essentially. Therefore, globally, we cannot identify how old a child is, so we say it's 18. In this country, of course, you can get married and age of consent is 16. Therefore, there is a disjunct between the age of 16 at consent and what I call the age of representation at 18. You could therefore have two people who are 16 having consensual sex, recording it on their mobile phones. This is just common in this country now. It's just a technological thing that people do, and they are creating indecent images of children of themselves. So there is a quiddity in the law that creates this disjunct between 16 and 18. There is, of course, one statutory provision which allows you to do it if you're married at 16. I'll leave that for you to
Can I come back on Pandora's point? So one of the things that we're directed to do is take a proportionate approach. So what we're going to do is identify those tube sites, those other big sites where we know that children are going, and there's plenty of data that's available to us to show where children are going, and we're going to be focusing on those sites. So for example, the government research showed that around 70% of people access pornographic websites in the UK only access 50 websites between the 70%. With children, it's a higher percentage and a lower number of websites. So we know that by starting with the top 50 websites, we can have a massive impact on child protection. So we will be...
But what about next year or the year after that? What advice am I meant to give to my colleagues in the industry what about the mum who's running a sex blog with her husband, publishing photos that they've taken at home to talk about sex, share their desires, their fantasies, which is exactly the kind of conversation we need to be having. Is she going to have age verification in 5 years' time because you've got all the big players and now you're starting to go after the small fry?
I want to ask Vicky as well, from a parent's perspective, do you worry, because one of the points that's been made on this is all that's going to happen is porn is then going to be pushed onto social media, and that of course is where kids are spending so much of their time. So do you worry that actually inadvertently this law can just move the problem, make it worse?
I do think that's one of the $6 million questions, actually, the unintended consequences question. Where will the porn go? Because porn won't go away. And young people are already accessing porn through social networks. So, but does that mean that we shouldn't try this? Absolutely not. I think we just have to keep trying to make sure that young kids don't accidentally access porn.
Let me read you this statement because we got it from James Clark, who is an Age ID spokesperson. Age ID is a secure, robust and a private tool that will authenticate any individual over the legal age, allowing access to view adult content online in compliance with the Digital Economy Act 2017, which is set to come into force later this year. So many people have been getting in touch with us, our viewers, this morning with their experiences and their points of view. I just want to read a few of them to you. We've had an email from Mark. Anyone foolish enough to register themselves will instantly be considered suspicious and would definitely be used against anyone in court for anything, no matter how remotely related, even to show bad character. We simply cannot trust anyone to keep this information safe and secure, as it also has implications for blackmailing people. Winko on Facebook says, I think it would be at least one step in the right direction. Pornography online is too easy to get access to, and it should only be available to adults with an access code that can only be obtained if the subscriber has proven his or her legal age. Harry has also got in touch with us. Harry says, I'm over 18 and I watch porn around 3 times a week. I have done for many years, even as an under 18. I feel that no matter whether the government try to stop under 18s, they're always going to find a way with non-mainstream porn sites that could show more hardcore porn. And a final thought from Ross on Facebook: to be perfectly honest, if you want to access porn, you're going to get it. It is the internet we're talking about after all. Thank you all so much for coming on. We could talk about this for hours, but sadly we don't have time. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will make America great again.